Oh, I think we got Rick Flair on. Rick, how you doing?
I'm fine, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for coming on again.
I apologize for having to leave early last night, so I want to make it up to you tonight, man. I was going pretty good last night, I think, huh?
Yeah, you were doing really good. We were getting like every phone line was lit. We were getting emails like crazy. Yeah, definitely.
Well, great.
Let me get through this. Let's see. What do I have? Oh, I have a whole list of questions. I never even got to ask hardly any of them yesterday. The first time that a lot of people outside of the Carolinas and I guess AWA got to see you regularly was on the Superstation, Channel 17. Before it was TBS, I think it was WTCG out of Atlanta. On the Saturday and Sunday shows, you would come up to the Carolinas. Seemed like about once a month. Is that about right? You weren't there like every week.
I started in '78. Yeah, Harley Ray told me. Harley was traveling to the Carolinas. He said, Harley, as a kid, if you want to get a jump on it, try and get yourself on that show in Atlanta. Nobody even knew what it was back then, He said it's going to be the thing that changes our business. Harley told me that back in probably must have been '77.
Okay, because that was exactly what I was going to ask you. Is you were on there, and it gave basically the nation as far as the number of people who had cable TV, which is a fraction of what it is today, but it was still they were seeing wrestling from out of their territory, which was unusual at the time, and you were one of the stars of the show. I was wondering, since you were one of the few guys who was coming from another territory to be there fairly often, I mean, when that happened, did you know you were on the ground floor of something really huge, or was it just you were booked in Atlanta, so you went to Atlanta?
No, actually, I wasn't. What happened was I think that was Crockett's way of trying to get me some exposure, hoping that they were going to be able to get, when Jim Crockett's father died, Jim Crockett Sr., they lost all their stroke in the NWA. Not because of lack of position with the company, but because of the fact that Jim Crockett Sr. was like Eddie Graham or Fritz Von Erich or Bob Geigel or Jim Barnett or Vince McMahon Sr. He was one of the older established guys, and when he died, the company came into the hands of Jimmy Crockett, and nobody knew who Jimmy was. Henceforth he lost the stroke, or I guess what I'm trying to say, the power that they had, in terms of trying to get a champion out of that territory. Everybody wanted to have the champion come out of their territory, especially with the power that Eddie Graham had in Florida and Fritz Von Erich had and Bob Geigel. They really had control of the NWA. So what happened was Barnett came up to meet with Jim Crockett and seen me a couple times. Jim Barnett, who at that time was running that TV and was one of the most powerful guys in our industry, not only in America but over in Australia. So he saw me. He's the one that brought me down, and I think Jim Barnett had as much to do with me getting the title or getting my first title in '81 as probably Jim Crockett. I mean, Jimmy pushed me, but Jim was the guy that brought me down and featured me on that TV. With Ole Anderson's booking at that time, but they're the ones that used me, and it was I had no idea. The guys that were on that TV back then, when we went to Ohio or wherever we went, it was out of Georgia. It was huge. I mean, we were like rock and roll stars, especially Tommy Rich. And Tommy Rich was over at that period of time as good as anybody ever in the business, in a smaller market, of course.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't remember that one. One of the guys also that you worked with in that period that I remember in the very early days of Superstation Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling, was Tony Atlas. So I guess Tony probably came down from the Carolinas too at that point, right?
Well, he had already left the Carolinas. He's from Roanoke, Virginia. And Ole and Gene broke him in Charlotte, and he spent about maybe 2 years in the Carolinas, and somehow, there was a reciprocal agreement between Crockett and Jim Barnett at that time, and they wanted another guy to come down into that Atlanta market, a black guy because they had a huge demographic that followed the black guys, and Thunderbolt Patterson at that time was kind of put himself in a position not to be pushed anymore, and they brought Tony in, and then he got over huge in the Atlanta market, and of course he got over huge wherever he went. He was another guy that potentially should have been one of the big players for a long time, but let his personal problems overwhelm him, and consequently, it's the story is it's not a good story. It has ended yet, but he has not obviously seen what he should have seen in the industry.
Yeah, he was very big for a period of time there. One of the things with Tony Atlas, because the first matches I saw of Tony Atlas were against you, and I guess it's kind of a funny story now because at that time, we all thought, man, this Tony Atlas, what a phenomenal worker.
Yeah, thank you. He could press land me and give me the suplex after the belt. And he tried hard. Tony, you know what? He was a good amateur wrestler in high school. And he had good ability, but just another guy that, I appreciate the compliment, and we worked hard with those guys. There were a lot of them in the business that have come through here, the last 20 years, and we worked hard with them. But, and I appreciate the compliment from you, but it took a lot of guys like myself and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, Ole, and the guys that were, that were built to help make other people look good. That's what we did, and Tony was very receptive and a very nice guy and always showed me a lot of respect, so I had no problem, helping him.
I guess in his day, he must have been like a real powerhouse. Some of the lifts he did, he's still kind of like, age group-wise, I think probably one of the stronger guys in the country.
Let me tell you, Dino Bravo, who was, we all know, was a real strong guy and a real nice guy, by the way. Dino and Tony were in Charlotte at the same time, and Bravo was tremendously strong, for those that didn't know that. And I saw them in the gym one day. I saw Tony do 8 reps with 505, and I saw Dino Bravo do 12 with 505 in the bench.
Really? Well, I've never seen that in my life, and I see a strong guy.
Same day, yeah, they're both. And this is 1978 or 79. Bravo was a horse. Bravo could bench about 600 pounds.
Yeah, they did a gimmick with him, trying to do like whatever 700, which at that point was a gimmick.
Yeah.
But, I remember like people were going like, that was like all fake, and I go, yeah, but the guy is he can really bench like over 5, like anyway.
No, I saw him do 580. I can't say I saw him do 600, but I would, in my estimation, you could call Dino Bravo a 600 bencher. Tony Atlas, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, you will, Dave, he took a close grip. It was almost like a tricep press for him. If he had ever learned to bench with his chest instead of the triceps, Tony probably would have benched, who knows what. He had about maybe an 8 to 10 inch grip, from hand to hand. He wouldn't go wide. And the big guys always, the big bench pressers are always with a wide grip. Sure. Tony was all triceps, but he could just blow that thing off the chest. They had a bench press contest between he and Bob Backlund in Atlanta, probably in about 1979. Bob Backlund was another guy who could bench press 500 pounds.
Yeah, which people I'm sure now don't realize. Bob Backlund was never, certainly after the 80s, was never like thought of as a power guy, but I remember him in the late 70s, and he was a powerhouse.
Oh, it's tremendous. Guys look at Bob and think, God, how could he do it? But Bob could bench press 500 pounds. And keep in mind, they did it in the ring, which had some spring to it. They did it in Atlanta several times. Bob was real powerful.
Rick, we actually have listeners like all over the world. This email came in from Auckland, New Zealand. It says, Rick, I'm in New Zealand. I've been a fan of yours for years. I've always wondered the reason for your dropping the WWF title to Bret Hart at a house show. Actually, I think that was a TV taping, but it didn't air on television. What were the reasons for the title change? Not airing on television, as a Hart versus Flair world title match on television or pay-per-view would have been a classic. Do you know what was behind that?
I can't answer that question other than the fact that I was just told to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted at that time. I think that they came back from Europe. They rethought what was going on in the business. And I really don't know. I can't answer that question. I know I got the call. I was actually in Los Angeles, and we did it in Calgary, his hometown.
Saskatoon, maybe.
Was it Saskatoon? Okay.
I think it was somewhere up there. I don't think it was Calgary, but it was somewhere in that area.
Well, it was near, his whole family came, and I don't know why they didn't make a big deal out of it. It was just a 2-day decision, and they did it. And, I had no problem with it. As a matter of fact, I had just come back. I don't know, Dave, you remember when I had the inner ear deal?
Yeah, you had the vertigo thing?
Yeah, I had the inner ear thing, and I had that, and I still wasn't over that. And I don't know whether that was, influenced the decision to do it or not, but at that point, I did it that day, and I ended up being off for about 5 months. Remember that? Yeah. As a result of that thing. So, I don't know. It was just one of those things that they made up their mind. They probably had a booking meeting and said, we need to make some changes here, because Hulk had left at that point. Roddy had left, and I'm not sure whether they were trying to build a new baby face or exactly what they were doing, but it just came down that day.
Yeah, I know that Warrior and Davey Boy Smith had both been fired just a couple of weeks earlier, and I think they were like the top main eventing babyface. So I think that they just felt that they needed a top babyface and they needed him in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they picked Brett. I got a funny story about that one. And that is when Brett got the word about that, which was probably just a few days before it happened. This isn't like I don't know how many days ahead of time, and maybe at some point he'll tell the story. But he was brought into a meeting, I think it was with McMahon and Patterson, and they just went to him and they just go, we've decided we have to go in a new direction. And he's just sitting there. He was doing pretty well. He'd been Intercontinental Champion, and he just goes, "Oh my God, they're going to fire me." And instead they told him he was going to get the title.
Oh really? Yeah. Well, yeah, he's a nice guy. I get along real well with Brett, and I have no problem thinking that he probably was a little surprised because I don't. When I went up there, he was just it wasn't like what you would call mid card. He was Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah.
And he was in some main events and that, but he'd been in that role for a long time. And I got along with him very well, and. I actually, when I worked, when I had the title and he was challenging me, we worked a little bit around the country. We drew real well together like that. And, when we switched it around, I think it didn't have the same interest level that it did with him chasing me. But we had a good time, and actually, I spent a lot of time with Brett on a European tour right before that happened. And, we got along very well. So I had no problem doing it, and I think that, it was a big deal for him that night. His whole family came. I just wish it could have been, on a more grandiose level, like you said earlier.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's go to the phones. We've got Todd from Illinois. Todd, you're on the air with the only person ever in the history of this business to have a 3-star match with the Giant Gonzalez.
Believe it or not, that was going to be one of my first statements. That's when you know Rick is larger than life, when he can have a good match with El Gigante in Chicago in front of 1,000. But actually, the reason I'm calling, I had the privilege of talking to Terry Funk for about an entire evening about pro wrestling one night, and I found out that he wasn't the fondest of Rick, based on some happenings in 1989. As far as he said that he was kind of unaware about the retirement angle that was going to take place, and I know Rick was in charge of the booking at that time, and he said that Jim Ross and Rick were pretty much trying to run him out of the NWA, and I'm wondering if I can get the other side of the story on that.
I'm glad you asked that question. I'm glad that has come up. You're asking me or Dave?
I'm asking you, Rick.
Yeah, that's entirely untrue. That was. And if Jim Ross can hear me, that was entirely a Jim Herd production. As a matter of fact, I was not in charge of booking at that time. And we went to Memphis. That thing was not Memphis, Nashville, which is where Terry.
This when Terry came back
after the match. Yeah, I had no idea. You're talking about the I Quit thing in New York, right?
The I Quit match in Troy, New York. Yeah.
Right. No, I had no idea. I was not in charge of booking at that time, and. That's exactly about the point in time that Jim Herd, myself, and Jim Ross completely went sideways with each other because he wanted me to cut my hair. I don't know, Dave, you know more of the story probably than I do, but there were huge. And Terry Funk to this day, and I was watching him. I guess it was just been less than a year ago with WWF as one of the guys that I actually have found not only to be one of the great wrestlers of our generation, but one of the most entertaining guys in the business. So that's not true. And gosh, I've been around Terry several times since then. If he said that to you, I'm sorry to hear that, because that was never. I would never have wanted to retire Terry Funk in any capacity.
Well, it wasn't more in a degrading way. I asked the question of why he called it quits in '89 when it seemed he was to a point where he was on top, and he just brought up that point.
Yeah, I know what happened, and I pushed him when I was booking in '95, about as far as the company would let me, because Terry wanted to do at that time doing the moonsault and the garbage can and all that stuff was all ECW stuff, and we were producing a show in Disney, and Eric was all over me about Terry doing that, but Terry come to me and say, I didn't mind, because I found Terry to be Terry Funk. I mean, he's a classic, he's a legend, and he's a guy that in my mind will always go down as one of the greatest guys, one of the greatest performers in our business. That was just in 1995, I had the book in terms of quote unquote the book, but I didn't have any say so, and that's just the way to put it.
That was good to hear the second side of that.
Yeah, I think if Terry feels that way, he's never told me that. we just, in '95, we were just trying to put everything together. We had just gotten Hogan to come into the company, and Jimmy Hart came with Hogan. I have a lot of respect for Jimmy, but the whole company was basically trying to restructure itself, or Eric was trying to restructure the whole company on a lot smaller budget than they have now to work with. And they were trying to actually rally around the Hulk Hogan image, and the Hulk wanted, of course, to have his guys around him, and that's basically the story. It'll always go down like that. So we were moving guys around as fast probably as we ever have, just trying to give him a level of comfort, and he wanted, of course, surround himself with guys that had been with him in the WWF.
All right, and my last question. Out of since you've been on top and been the heavyweight champion, who would you say in the ring treated you, I guess I want to say, with the least amount of respect? Was it a shooter, in the ring like Brody, or a young guy that was just coming up that thought he was on top? And does anybody come to mind?
I've never had that experience. I've never worked with anybody that didn't show me the respect of who I am in the ring.
Well, I think that's a tribute to you more than anything else.
No, actually, Brody and I wrestled Brody, and Dave knows where I'm coming from, in St. Louis one night in front of the biggest crowd in the history of the town at that time, in front of Japanese TV for an hour.
Yeah, the hour match, I remember.
Yeah, and he was a big card in St. Louis. He was right there with Dick the Blues, and that's Payne. Brody as big a compliment as I can, God rest his soul, because he was a huge card there. But those guys, it's funny because they knew the word. I think the word with me in the industry was that I was there to make the match, never to make myself. And if a guy gave me a good match, I could make myself, if that makes sense to you. If a guy allowed me, if they gave me the time, and if the guy had confidence in me, which almost of the top guys did, I could get myself over just by being in the ring with the guy. I could lose every night, but I could be, if I had 50 minutes or 35 minutes to lose, the people went home saying, God, that guy got beat, but Christ, in my mind, they went home saying, what a tremendous performer he is. That's kind of how I analyzed my whole career. So Brody, I had a great time with Brody. I can't remember I can't say I had great matches all the time with guys, but I don't think I ever had a problem. I kind of think you're asking me a question, you're kind of catching me off guard, but I don't think I ever had that problem. I can't remember ever having it. Never had a guy.
Thanks for your time, Tim. Dave, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem. Rick, one of the things was that the most frustrating period of your career working for Jim Herd, or was like the last couple of years, like under Eric, more frustrating?
They were equal. I remember Jim Ross saying one night, and I don't think Jim meant anything else, but he said Rick, you're going to be 39 years old. Yeah, we have to do something with you. You're 39.
I remember this. This would have been probably right around December 1989. Okay, there was probably a Christmas show in Atlanta, and I was not there for the conversation, but some friends of mine were and called me like that night, and we were laughing, except it was not. It was serious. Yeah. And you had just. In '89, you had just finished the program with Steamboat and then with Funk, and they were unbelievable matches. Some of the best matches of your career, some of the best matches you've ever seen. And at the end of the year, they were just, WCW had its ups and its downs, but they did not make money that year. And the whole thing was, we're going to turn this company around. We just have to replace Flair as champion. And we were just like, don't they understand that that's the one thing about the company that's working is the main event? No, the problem was that in those days there was no undercard. It was a one-match show. I shouldn't say no undercard, but so a lot of the undercard wasn't so strong in that period.
Yeah, but see what you're saying, Dave, is true, because back then, as is now, or should be as is now, the guy that's wearing the title, they look to him as being the guy that is responsible for making the show or the company or the revenue work, and that's not what the territory. I understood that, but see, I wasn't given an opportunity when Turner took over the company. It wasn't wrestling as we knew it. That was the first initial change. I mean, it wasn't where I'd go into a building and you would say, well, here's a guy we built for a year to wrestle a champion, and if you're over the champion, we're going to draw a big house. It was like work inside this enclosed environment, take care of yourself, which was hard to do, but build A, B, C, D, what I'm saying? make these guys look like, they're ready to be challengers to your title, or better yet, let's just redo the whole thing. You cut your hair, Herd wanted me to cut my hair, get a earring. I remember Kevin Sullivan looked at him one day and said, why don't we just change Mickey Mantle's number? I mean, that's true. We sat in this meeting. I was flabbergasted at the stuff they came up with. And I knew Jim Ross, like everybody else, this business, because of its nature and its design, because it is the most most insensitive business in the world. Jim was just looking for a job too. He wanted to be in Herd's ear, and Jim was, and so Jim, took advantage of that. Me, I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. I didn't have any social time with Jim Herd at all, and he was there, and history will tell the story. It's one of those things that, as someone said to me today, he said, you've been there. I was going to say it on TV one day, I decided not to, but I've been there through 5 or 6 different bosses in 10 years.
Oh, except for the period where you was McMahon for that couple-year period. You've been there since the day one of the whole company.
Yeah, and I came back, and I was with Bill for a month where he got fired,
Right.
That's something I've seen it all. I was going to use that as a promo one night on TV that I've been there to see 5 guys come and go, but I didn't think it was in good taste.
In the 1970s, I think about 75, 76, you were in, just as your career was taking off, you were in a plane crash.
Yes.
That was a plane crash that ended the career of Johnny Valentine, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I did. And Bob Ruggers.
The question is, how long did it take you to get back on an airplane after that?
Actually, I think I told you, Dave, I got back on an airplane in, February. I crashed in October and got back on an airplane in February. They started me out, of course, on a 747. Actually, what they did the first time, they rented a full-blown, big-time jet back in that time, which was a very nice airplane. It's probably a Lear 9 or something like that. And then, as I gradually gained some confidence, I got because we were doing those double shots all the time, which required the transportation of an airplane. So it started me out on a big plane, and after about a month, it came down, and finally I left back right on the same kind of plane I crashed in within about 2 months. So actually, I was on an airplane in 6 months, to answer your question.
Did you what was your feeling up there when did you know something was bad or what happened exactly on that plane crash?
Well, it's funny, I'm the guy actually I can't take credit for any more than the fact that I recruited the kid. His name was Michael Farkas, and he, as you know, he died a year after the accident. But I met Michael, and I would just at that point in time I was tired of driving 2,000 miles a week. I said, gosh, I've only been doing this a year, or actually about a year and a half. I just don't think it's what I want to do the rest of my life. I love wrestling, but there's got to be an easier way to get around. And, sure enough, I could, back at that point in time, you could take a plane like this. It was a 6-passenger plane. We flew all over the Southeast, for $500 a day. It was unbelievable. So, I say 6 guys, Valentine, Wahoo, Paul Jones, we were all flying in it. And on that particular day, it happened to be Valentine, myself, Bob Ruggers, Jimmy Crockett, who was supposed to be there, ended up not going, and St. David, for David, much to David's misfortune, and then Tim Woods. And what happened was that we found out later, of course, in court, that the guy didn't have a license. He'd moved here from Colorado, and they suspended his license there, had no license here, and what he did to carry the kind of weight that the plane was carrying at that time, which we didn't know, which was way over gross, he was carrying, limited fuel. And apparently we hit a headwind. We were flying from Charlotte to Wilmington, North Carolina, and at about Raleigh, he was at what they call a point of no return. Either go back to Raleigh or go to Wilmington or be here in the middle. And instead of going back to Raleigh, which he probably should have done, he tried to buck the headwind and make it into Wilmington. And Valentine kept pointing up to the fuel gauges, which were on empty, and going, only Johnny can go. But he was kidding me, but he was kidding himself, It made us all very nervous, but the pilot had the headphones on, couldn't hear the communication between the tower and him, and all of a sudden the right engine went off, and when it did, it didn't just spin around, it just went dead, it pinned, and he reached down to pull for the reserve tanks. When he hit the reserve tanks, he wasn't carrying the fuel, the left engine went out, and we were at about 5,000 feet. We just went straight down. We're 1,400 pounds over gross. Which was reported in court, So
was that like the longest moments of your life?
You know what? I don't remember anything except getting on the ambulance. The guy was loading us on the ambulance, and the only reason we weren't all dead is because there was no fuel on the plane to burn. So when we hit the ground, we were going so fast that instead of when we went to the treetops, normally hitting treetops of a plane that size of a cartwheel of a plane. We were going so fast, we broke through everything, and we hit a railroad thing. Was going 220 miles an hour. That's what was pinned on the dashboard. And one thing I remember is they loaded us on the ambulance, and the guy said, "Yeah, we're going to lose this one." I thought he was talking about me. He was actually talking about Bob Douglas had gone into shock, So I just have a very limited memory of it all. I don't even remember going down, but I knew that when that engine went off and the other one went down, we were in trouble. For some reason, that's been blocked off, probably for a number of good reasons. But it was really a bad deal. But I remember Wahoo and McDaniels, and this is a great story too that should be told, and if we told right now. Wahoo was wrestling that night. In fact, we were selling out everywhere back then. Wahoo was my opponent, was the first guy at the hospital. And of course, they wanted to keep Wahoo out of the hospital. I thought he was coming in there to beat me up. This is how the business was back then. Wahoo came. Busted into the emergency room and said, "Are you okay?" and all that. I mean, the nurses and the doctors, everybody was in shock because everything was kayfabe. And I'll tell you what, they had an $80,000 or $90,000 house in Greensboro the next night. The only thing that saved the territory is Tim Woods agreed to go into the ring, because to this day, if you could find people, and it's a very limited audience, but to this day, people know that Tim Woods was on that plane. He walked out of the hospital. Because it was so kayfabe back then. Woods and Valentine entered into a real heavy program.
Right. Because Tim Woods was babyface and the rest of you guys were heel.
Exactly. And Valentine was like his adversary then. And, the Crockett said, "God, you need to do me a favor, walk into the ring, so they don't think you were in an airplane, because the word was getting around." And back then it was so kayfabe, people would have been astonished to think that Mr. Wrestling was on that plane with us. And so Tim did the business and did the Crockett's a huge favor. And as usual, didn't get anything back for it. So
wow. Let's go to Ed in New York. Ed, are you there?
Yeah, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
I just got Ricky, excuse me if I mark out a little bit here.
I can't hear him, Dave.
Can't believe I'm actually speaking to you.
Ed, talk a little bit louder.
Okay, Rick.
Yes.
A couple people I was curious of your opinion on. I know Bill Watts.
I can't hear him at all, Dave.
Oh, he's asking for your opinion about Bill Watts.
I know a lot of people, they, either you love him or you hate him, and I was just wondering what Rick Flair's opinion of him was.
Going back to what I said last night, when you're asking about Bill Watts, I judge everybody in this business. I have, over the years, I've learned how they treated me, and Bill Watts, for some reason, unbeknownst to probably a lot of people, treated me tremendously. He paid me the correct percentage when I went and worked for him, which was unheard of. And when I came to Atlanta, he treated me like who I am, and that's probably because in 1972, when he came to Minneapolis, Vern Guinan sent me to pick him up when I carried his bags from the airport into my car, drove him down to the building, carried his bags in the building. That's probably he's probably rolled over, but Bill treated me great, and I see Bill periodically now because my son wrestles, my youngest one's an amateur wrestler, and I take him to the Tulsa Nationals, which is a real tough national tournament every year. So Bill always comes out to see him, and he's always very respectful of me, and I've gotten along great with him. I've never had any kind of bad dealings with Bill, other than the fact that every time I went out there, he wanted me to wrestle Butch Reed or Jake or somebody for an hour every day, which he never did himself. But other than that, I have no problem with Bill Watts.
Let's go to David in Arizona. Dave, are you there?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to bring up some of the great matches Rick had. I was thinking, when I was after that Horseman return, I made a bunch of compilation tapes of Flair matches in the original Horseman. And I mean, he had a tremendous match with Bret Hart in Boston. It was a marathon match for an hour.
Yeah, an hour.
And then a few matches with Barry Windham, which I think should have won the Observer Match of the Year in '87.
The Baltimore.
The TV match?
Yeah, the one in the Crockett Cup was just...
Oh, that was a hell of a match with the Crockett Cup in Baltimore, right.
Yeah.
And then the one in North Carolina. But one of the matches didn't even, when I was going through my all my TV tapes, I have a match with you against Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
Bret Hart was a 5-star match, but that was kind of a disappointment. If you would have known that Michaels would have gone on to be the legend that he is, I mean, do you wish that you would have worked with him more, and are you glad that you got to work with him as much as you did?
Well, here's the funny story, with a TV match, we had like 8 minutes.
Right.
There was no way. One of the things that I would love to tell everybody tomorrow is that Shawn Michaels is going to come back to wrestle me in New York. Or wrestle me in wrestle me in Atlanta, wherever it would be. I would love to wrestle Shawn Michaels. I think that he has said the same thing about me. If I thought I could wrestle Shawn Michaels for 30 minutes on either one of our programs, whether it be New York or the Atlanta show, that's where I work now, I would invest a bunch of time to make myself right for that moment. I mean, to me, he is a tremendous performer and a gentleman. I have a lot of time and a lot of respect for Shawn Michaels. But the time you're talking about, we were in Corpus Christi, Texas. And they came up to me and said, you got 8 minutes with Shawn Michaels. I mean, there was nothing to do. You just can't have a match between two guys like he and I. And he has a lot of respect for me, which I in turn have respect for him. But he's a guy that can wrestle. He's a guy that can do phenomenal things, which I could have never done. I can't say I could. I take it back. I'm not saying I couldn't have done them. I wasn't trained to do moonsaults off ropes and stuff like that. Had I taken the time to do that, I'm sure I could have done that too. I'm not limiting myself, but he's a guy that was just a tremendous athlete and a tremendous technician, and a guy that really loved our business. Because to be as good as he got to be, you have to really have respect and love for our business.
Yeah, when I saw that match, I think it was like in my December '92 tapes. It was like right before his heel turn. I mean, when I caught that match on tape, I just started dying.
With Marty Jannetty, and he was just in a tag match situation, and they at that point in time hadn't figured out who the guy was. I mean, he's just a tremendous performer.
Rick, do you ever get to watch the Rockers, Brainbusters, any of those matches?
Oh yeah,
Arn Tully against the Rockers. Yeah, they had some great matches in that era.
Arn makes him watch them. Yeah, they did. They had tremendous matches, but that was wrestling. See, what Shawn Michaels was a well-built, handsomer than handsome Ricky Morton. I mean, Ricky Morton could work his ass off, and Shawn Michaels came along in the same. I mean, Shawn had the same kind of appeal. And but he actually was even I'm not saying that a better worker. Yeah, he was a better performer than Ricky Morton even at that time. Of course, he became probably the best performer in our business. He really did. I'm not saying that to slight myself. I think that there's aspects of our business that I'm better at than he is. And but I cannot say that Shawn Michaels is not one of the greatest performers I've ever seen. Yeah, I think he's way out there.
When he was on, he was about as good as anyone.
Yeah, he's way out there. I really have a lot of respect for him, and I think I've said that to a lot of people. He's right there. He was not only because of what he could do, but because of his attitude. Attitude is a lot in life. I mean, it really is. I mean, everything we see from Nike on down his attitude, but he really had a good attitude, and he loved the business. He could have wrestled an hour every night too. I mean, he could have. He loved being out there.
Okay, let's go to John in New York. John, are you there?
Rick, how you doing?
Good.
I got a quick question for you. How close were you to jumping to Titan back for WrestleMania 7 with Hogan at the LA Coliseum?
With Hogan
in 1991? Is that the year you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was already there.
Can you hear me? Or
I was at Titan then when that happened.
WrestleMania 7.
No. You would have started with Titan about 3 months after that? No. You would have started.
You started in September of 91.
Right, he started September 91, so this is like March of 91.
Yeah. I remember there was a rumbling like a few weeks before WrestleMania that year that you were supposed to come in.
I had been ready to go for 2 years. I had an opportunity to go in '86 and passed it up. A huge opportunity and passed it up because I really didn't know that much about the structure of the difference between our company and theirs. But I could see that Dusty and Jimmy Crockett were putting together something that did not include me. And I was having such a good time. But my problem is, and Dave has been out with me socially, and that is that the business has always been and always goalie for me. I will never let it get bad. I mean, I've let it stress me out before. I'll always remember more good than I will bad. I mean, there's so much good that came of this business for me. I've enjoyed it. I've learned from it. I've prospered from it. And that's my problem. I always want to give back to it. It's not a problem. It's just something. It's the way I am. And back then, I didn't know the difference. I mean, I told Dave last night, I knew that Hogan was there and Savage and DiBiase. Those guys are just contemporaries of mine. I mean, I was happy that Ted DiBiase was doing well. I was happy that Piper was. Didn't know Hogan well enough to care whether he was doing well or not, but I knew that he was. But I looked at myself and I looked around me and I saw, gosh, the best performers of business are right here. I didn't even think about WWF. So I really didn't think about going until you're talking about the year. And then when I saw that I was not getting my due, which I very rarely have asked for, I wanted to go real bad. So to answer your question, I can't remember just how badly I wanted to go, but I did want to go earlier than I did. Yeah.
I was talking to someone in Minnesota a few weeks back, and they mentioned that you used to be one of the Vachon paper boys.
Well, what?
You were a paper boy for one of the Vachons?
Yeah, for Mad Dog. Mad Dog and Paul. Yeah.
Oh, my God. I was talking to him. He was like, because he lived down the street from one of the Vachons.
Yeah, and he dined at it. They both lived in an apartment complex next to my parents.
Oh, my God. That's incredible.
Yeah, I was right there. Mad Dog. And let me just break this down for you. In our business, there have been 3 or 4 guys that have thought they're tough, and Dave will love this. Haku, to this day, is the man. And I'll back that with anybody that wants to argue that. Okay. But when I started in the business, Mad Dog Vachon was, and probably is even on one leg, still the man. And Maurice Vachon was a very, very tough person and a good amateur wrestler on the 48 team for Canada. But he was also a very, 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 very tough guy.
Very dangerous guy.
Oh,
and he really wasn't that big of a guy either.
No, he was about 220 pounds, which was real big for him, but he had a heart that weighed about 180 pounds. I put him in the same class with Haku.
Dave, this is a coup to have Ric Flair on your show after a month of being on. Is there any chance
in a row?
An 18-page interview with you and Flair in the newsletter anytime soon?
That's coming up next. We can't give that away, right, Dave? Special subscription.
I'm crazy to see that in writing.
You know,
I could do a 5-hour special.
There was with Mick Foley's book on the bestseller list and everything. Has anyone talked to you about, like as far as like doing a book? I mean, Dynamite Kid I was actually today reading Dynamite Kid's autobiography. It just came out on Monday, and it's pretty good reading too. Mick Foley's is kind of a classic book already.
Well, it's funny. I've been approached 2 or 3 times. My wife's walking up to me right now, Dave, so I can't tell the truth, but I'll have to write my book. My book will be much more exciting than theirs. You know that, right, Dave?
If you tell all, it will be.
She said, "Give me a diggy." She said, "Tell Dave I love him. Send me the tape that he owes me, and he owes me the original, not the bogus one." And I've got to go have dinner with her. So, to answer your question, I'd love to write a book, but Dave, you and I'll have to discuss that behind closed doors. We'll find the right guy to write it. I thought Mark Madden probably did a guy to write it, but we'll have to edit, make it the right thing. It'll be a much more interesting book than just about wrestling.
Yeah,
as you know.
Yeah.
The 4 Horsemen were real. Can I close by saying goodbye, Dave?
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
I have to. And tell the gentleman out there to ask that question. And when we write the book, it'll be a bestseller for sure. Okay, man?
Okay, thanks so much, Rick.
Hey, Dave, thank you. Call me tomorrow, okay?
Okay, we'll talk soon.
All things have gone well, and I really appreciate you guys featuring me, and I appreciate all the nice compliments and all the nice things you've all said. And Dave, to you personally, I hope everyone can hear this. I've always appreciated and always will the recognition. It really is nice.
Well, you're very welcome, and you've worked hard for it. You've worked hard for it, and everything that you've gotten, you've deserved, and everyone knows that.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Okay.
God bless you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.